perhaps Aston Villa can provide a bit of dazzle.
Yeah.
They've started the season well. They've won 4 out of 5 in the league, and of course have taken to the Champions League pretty well. Now, I know it was only young boys away. They've got Bayern at home soon enough. No doubt they'll be pleased to see Vincent Kompany back. He has a different squad this time, though. But yes, Villa have been good, though, have they not, Vish, so far this season?
They have been very good.
The only loss was against Arsenal, of course, and you think about that game with the chances Watkins had, it could have been different.
Yeah, and what we know of Arsenal now is that they cheat as well. So you've got to factor that in.
Yep.
Cheats and crybabies and they waste time. Enemies of football, really. So
all part of the game.
Yeah.
Sort of.
I love it. You've changed your tune from Jose Mourinho's Chelsea. No, it's fine now. This is legitimate.
Yeah. It's you. I suppose we were all wondering, as is always the case when a team breaks into the top 4, and they're not seen as the part of the regular quote unquote top 6.
Yes.
Is that you worry about how they can sustain it, or you're certainly interested by how they can sustain it.
You're thinking about David Moyes' Everton, aren't you?
Many moons ago, yeah. How long ago was that?
I was trying to think of another club that
lost
did
to
this.
Villarreal in the qualifier, didn't they?
Yeah.
Didn't get into the Champions League.
So I think signed James Beattie for the Champions League.
Yeah,
push,
but I'm just fair to say they didn't sustain that.
Yeah, but it's because of what we know about the the haves and have-nots now, particularly because that gap has widened so dramatically. Is like can you really sustain it to a point? And they can, and they feel like they've upgraded, despite the fact that when they sold Douglas Luiz to Juventus, I was like, that's a bit sad. Because
Looked like a big loss.
Yeah, but they are just as exciting, just as fun, bit more cunning. I think that young boys game was particularly smart because a lot of regular Champions League teams go there, play on that artificial pitch and come unstuck in some way, or certainly find it harder than Villa found it.
Which is very different to what they're...
Yeah.
I say very different. It's certainly different.
Yeah, but they seem to be taking everything in their stride, and I think a lot of that credit should go to Emery because he obviously has the European experience, but he seems to just know the club, doesn't he? And he has a full gamut of his squad.
Yes, it's duck to water, really, isn't it? With Emery going to Villa, which is it's a glorious thing in football when you see that, because we spoke yesterday about Lopetegui at West Ham, and Jim, you were pleading for everybody, myself and Vish, to give him more time. And of course, if you go in a very different environment, blah 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 blah, we all know this, but Emery to Villa, my goodness, it's clicked, and it's been quite pleasing, again, as a neutral. I think Villa are quite a likeable club, and Birmingham City fans will obviously strongly disagree, and so will one or two others. But it's just been quite pleasing to see him back in the Premier League at a club where he's loved and not hounded out of, Jim.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a sort of a happy marriage there, isn't it? I think there is an element that Emery probably felt like he had something to prove in the Premier League.
Yes.
Villa were coming off the back of it was a sort of worrying situation they were in. It feels mad that Steven Gerrard was their manager so recently, because it looked like, are they going to get dragged into another relegation scrap?
Yeah.
Like, because that was the first time they were relegated from the Premier League, wasn't it, when they went down before? And it's like, it was unthinkable at Villa for a long time, and they're staring at that possibly being a reality again. The turnaround is incredible, and absolutely amazing get, like a really, really great appointment. And I think you're right to talk about the sort of second season syndrome that we see so often after a team's had sort of a bit of an overachievement. But they have absolutely flown out of the blocks. I think they've built the squad really, really well as well. They've augmented it really well. I mean, Ian Martson, been a really good signing.
Yeah,
Onana's
class.
probably the sort of the eye-catching one, and he's scoring goals as well, which was maybe not expected from him. And you've also got this fascinating situation where both Ollie Watkins and John Duran look like they should be the starting striker. Maybe he's going to have to sort of play them both together up top soon, and it will be 15 years ago, and we'll all be a bit younger.
There, now you're talking. Well, I'll be up for all of that. But I mean, Duran himself has scored 4 goals in 5 sub-appearances this season, which, I mean, it's Ole Gunnar Solskjaer-esque, I might say. But it's a handy weapon. People sometimes forget that it is more so nowadays, you might argue, with the physical demands, especially with the schedule and so on. It is such a scored game, and with that many subs as well. But the goals they're scoring, I mean, there's nothing like, obviously you can't rely on 25-yarders and all the rest of it. But the goals Villa score, they've got goals of all kinds, if you like, in their team. they've got ones where you think that's off the training ground, or there's Emery, that's one of his teams, and so on. And then they're bringing out a few worldies as well. I mean, even Tielemans, we know he can hit them as well. So there's a
couple of those in the locker for this season.
Well, there's goals in this side.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing you mentioned Tielemans, because he had a tough start to life at Villa last season, and now he's just there all the time.
Well, I was worried he might move on, actually.
Yeah, there was definitely that feeling, wasn't there?
Because with Tielemans, when he went to, it was Leicester when he came to England.
From Monaco, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about him, saying that he is, one of these kind of really exciting midfield players. He's playing on the continent, as you say. Would he play for like an elite level side? It would turn out probably not. But can he play for a very, very good side and do stuff? And at Leicester, obviously Brendan Rodgers, everyone thought he'd really worked his magic there to get him, which he had. Rodgers really sold to him. And he'd win an FA Cup, scoring a beauty in the final, of course. They go down. You think, where does he go now? Villa seem like a decent enough fit. But you think, surely this guy should be starting games now. You see what he's been doing for Belgium. He's got a lot of tools in his toolbox as a midfield player. And to see him now being... I mean, Arsenal were linked for him for so long.
Loads of people were. Because do you remember he was
United as well?
Yeah, there was those three Belgian midfielders that everyone would get linked to. There was Steven Defour, there was Axel Witsel, and there was Yuri Tielemans.
Yeah.
And
so he's the latest in a long line.
Yeah, and Tielemans was the one who, United were linked with him, and it seemed to make sense. And
but this is a side. This is where he should be playing, if you see what I mean. At least because again,
well, you say that, but like
playing for Leicester when they get relegated, it's like, come on.
No, of course. But then that probably gives Villa the opportunity to take, quote unquote, a punt on him.
Yeah,
because they don't need to prize him from Leicester; they need to take him from Leicester.
But then, as you say, though, he didn't start that well at Villa, and it was suddenly looking a bit bitty.
It's an example of their very canny recruitment, isn't it? Now, Ross Barkley is obviously a really, really smart signing in a kind of similar mould, but also Morgan Rogers. We've spoken about him a lot and how good he's been and how impressive he's been. He came from Middlesbrough, didn't he? And you know, it's a little bit of a gamble in a regard, but he's been really, really impressive. And actually, he's kind of typical of the profile they're building in that he's very physically strong.
Yes.
And they've got a lot of physically strong players, but a lot of those players are forward players as well, which makes a massive, massive difference.
Rogers is a really interesting one because when I saw him, I was thinking, yeah, you're right, he came from Middlesbrough. He looks like one of those academy products. Oh, he was at Man City.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And oddly, I mean, it is the kind of, you kind of go, oh yeah, like Man City. I mean, the ultimate example of this perhaps is Cole Palmer. They cannot. The talent they produce, they can't fit everybody in. And
Romeo Lavia,
indeed. And the list goes on. These players will just have to find football elsewhere. But with Rodgers, I mean, he's still a very young man, of course, 22 years old. I mean, not that long ago, obviously Lincoln City on loan, then he did Bournemouth, Blackpool. So he's done his doggies, if you like. And then at Middlesbrough, played there, and Villa capture him, but. Looks like he's been playing in the Premier League for a couple of years. Again, the talent he possesses, and again, Emery embedding him into the side. And Luke thought he might get a call up for England.
I think he will, yeah. I think he'll be in the next squad.
There aren't many players with the same kind of profile, as in physical profile, as him, especially given the position he plays.
Yeah.
He's built like a decathlete.
Yeah.
Like he has all the kind of like strength to play. There were a couple of times this season where he's basically been playing, if not off Watkins, then alongside him.
Yep.
They've kind of had this big man thing where Watkins is the little man.
Yeah. Very stout Watkins, isn't he? But I think this is the challenge for Villa in a nutshell, really, isn't it? Like you talk about him maybe having a move like somewhere bigger. They are a Champions League side right now. So the aim has to be to sort of consolidate that. And you wonder, like, because the squad is good and deep, I'd be really interested to see how seriously they take the cups this season.
Well, I was going to ask you, what do you think they can aim for this season, realistically?
I think they it's not unrealistic to try and finish in the top four again.
Say quadruple.
I think that is unrealistic.
Okay.
Given that no one's ever done it. It'd be fair play if Villa managed that. But I think they can.
Clip that.
I think they can let themselves off that pressure.
Yeah. But how disappointing will it be if they don't win that quadruple? Jim?
Yeah. Well, we're all of us are always a little bit gutted. On the first day, I thought we might have that quadruple.
They've done a domestic treble, but ultimately the season ends.
Yeah. Who would you support when it gets to the last game of the season and it's between Villa for the Premier League and Nuno's Nottingham Forest? What do you do then? What do you do then?
You've got to go for Villa.
Well, I mean, you and I would want Villa just because that would be a true mugging off, wouldn't it? But you're right, though. I think that when you mentioned the cups there, this side feels like it's got a trophy in it. Champions League is obviously, I mean, Gordon Bennett, what a tall order that is. And obviously the Premier League as well. The Champions League for Villa is really just push it.
It's the money maker, yeah?
Yeah.
It's the, so in cricket.
Here we go.
Sorry, right.
Get yourself a cup of tea, Jim.
In cricket, there's red.
I'm so bored already.
Are you going to talk about one day? Is this Test cricket?
Both.
Or
both.
is 2020?
So basically, in English cricket, there's this idea of like, the cricket you should be playing and the cricket that pays you a lot of money.
Yes, of course.
And it's basically split between red ball cricket, which is the longer form, and white ball cricket.
Yeah.
So there's a phrase that players often use, privately. Red ball for show, white ball for dough.
Yeah.
Now, your white ball in this situation is the Champions League.
Yes.
Because it earns you that money. But you actually want something to show for your...
Totally.
And that can be a League Cup. Yeah.
Yeah. So
and you have the squad. You have the squad to like
call it the Carabao.
Yeah, you have the Carabao.
It does cheapen it, doesn't it?
But you basically have the squad to like be a Champions League team and at the very least give a good showing in the league stages and maybe go through the next round on the playoffs. But you also want to show give your fans and give those players that like tacit taste of success, which is winning a final, lifting a trophy, which can be achieved with the League Cup. Now they've got Wickham in the first round, and that's the balance, isn't it? Because they want to stay in the Champions League, but they know they're not going to win the Champions League.
Yeah, I think though that like,
and then sorry, very quickly, just because I remember it happened with Spurs. And then there'll come to a point where, oh shit, our league form's dropping a bit. Yeah. So we don't need to take this year's Champions League that seriously because we need to make sure we're in next year's Champions League. Yeah. So we need to save ourselves for the league.
And we've got that 150 grand from the Carabao win.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, they will need that. But that's right. This is the enormous challenge that Emery has this season, and you've just mapped it out there. But it's been a good start.
Yeah,
it has been a great start, and
we're kind of like throwing forward to this because we're talking about it. But I think it's something to
throw it forward because all that stuff's going to happen, right?
Yeah,
he will have those decisions to make. I mean, their next fixtures, as you say, they've got Wickham Wanderers in the Carabao Cup, and then Ipswich Town away. So you think, well, they're favourites for that. That's a game you should win, and then they host Bayern Munich.
Yeah, well,
after that, it's Manchester United. So. Like it's a funny old fixture list.
They've only played Arsenal so far from the sort of traditional top sides, so perhaps we're kind of giving them flowers too early.
Yeah.
But they've essentially done pretty well with what they've had in front of them so far, and look good doing it.
Well, if you're talking about the top sides, they are away to Liverpool on the 9th of November, and that is a dig at Manchester United.
Yeah, I know. We're like 2 weeks' time we're playing them. Rude.
It was rude.
I don't think they're that worried about the 8th best team in England, are they? Anyway, so yes, well done, Villa. Good start, and I think we want it to continue. Right, everybody, I want to finish the half with some former Premier League men strutting their stuff abroad. Andy Carroll has made a dream start to life in Bordeaux, scored a couple of goals. And again, just to remind you why Andy Carroll is in Bordeaux, it's not the Bordeaux who were fighting for titles not that long ago in a Champions League club. A bit of a desperate situation at Bordeaux. They've gone down the divisions, of course, in France. They've been punished. It's tough for the fans to take that, but perhaps the sight of Andy Carroll scoring British goals, as the commentators described it, Vish, will be a bit salve to the wound, do you think?
It's magnificent.
I think so. I reckon Andy Carroll can get us back in Europe as a nation.
Is that what we're down to?
If he goes over there and shows British values in British goals,
true,
they might think we want a piece of this.
Yeah.
What else have you got?
Macron will be begging for us.
Yeah.
Or whoever's in charge. I forget about French politics. But yes, so it's a couple of goals, a last-minute equaliser. It's good to see. I mean, he just loves life in France.
Yeah, this feels like an old story, doesn't it?
It does
feels
a bit,
like he's just on a little tour now.
Yeah.
Tour of headers for obscure French clubs.
Well, of course, we mentioned this when a particular tabloid were quite sneery at the fact he dropped down the divisions in France. And I was like, hang on.
What have you ever done?
Yeah, but he's playing football. He's now scoring goals, and he's living in Bordeaux. Yeah. Oh, dickhead!
Yeah,
you know what I
mean.
He's cooling down with wine and pate.
Oh, what a life!
Yeah,
you wouldn't have predicted this, would you?
No.
There's a lot of players where you think, oh yeah, they might like a sort of quite gouty late retirement. Actually, no, now it does make sense. Now I think about it.
About the same.
I reckon he's getting Doritos and dipping them in pate.
Yeah.
And then a bit like, getting annoyed that they're breaking, so he's scooping them up and putting them on. And
pints of wine.
What a life!
Still doing booze cruises.
Yeah,
but you live in France now. You don't need to.
He may or may not be doing that, everybody, but we hope.
No, he is doing that.
We hope he's having a lovely time.
He had to get fetched out of a vineyard for this game.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Somebody who's not having pints of wine is obviously Ivan Toney, unless he's popping over to Bahrain.
Yeah.
As a lot of them do live in Bahrain, so they can commute if they're playing for a Saudi side, that side. But Ivan Toney scored his first 2 goals for his new side, Al Ahly, on the weekend. They won 4-2. It's a beautiful story.
Were they British goals? Do we know?
We haven't got confirmation on that. Okay. We shall see. I don't know. He scored his second goal in the 16th minute of added time. So he's having to earn his money.
Yeah, he's working overtime for
Probably
it.
been doing some smart old cheating. Big fan of it.
Chris Smalling's debut in the Saudi Pro League wasn't as spectacular as he scored an own goal 5 minutes in and then received a straight red card 10 minutes into the second half.
How do you do that? They're not even proper players. How do you get sent off?
I know what you're thinking. It's Jonathan Woodgate. Yes.
Yeah, although Jonathan Woodgate's story was a lot madder because he'd been injured for about a year, scored an own goal, got sent off, and then got applauded off the pitch, got like a standing ovation.
And also, people forget this about Woodgate at Real Madrid. He left a bit of a cult hero.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. And also, Real Madrid. It wasn't Al Fire. Is the difference there? But always good to check in on the English lads abroad. God bless them. All right, coming up in the second half, we're going to talk about Newcastle United and the Carabao Cup tonight. See you in a moment.
To run and does. Can he play a colleague through? It's Jacob Murphy released. Murphy 1-on-1. Jacob Murphy to win it. Just put it in the net.
Welcome back to the Football Ramble, everybody. Right then, everybody. Jacob Murphy's team, Newcastle United, lost their first game of the season on Saturday. They were particularly poor in the first half of that game, but then, Fulham can do that to teams. We can all agree. Now, before the game, they found themselves in third place in the league, and it seemed like, it was not a bad start. But there seems to be a bit of chat about their flattering to deceive a bit. And this is from, actually, a lot of Newcastle fans as well. If you look at the results they've had this season, they beat Southampton on the opening day and were very unconvincing, because Southampton should have got something out of the game. If you think about Brereton Diaz, the chances he missed. Drew 1-1 away to Bournemouth. Not a terrible result, but again, not too inspiring. Okay, they beat Forest on penalties in the Cup, and Forest have had a good start. They then beat Spurs 2-1, and all the reports and anybody who watched the game would suggest that Spurs were quite dominant, even though Newcastle pulled it out.
Yeah, Spurs definitely lost that game.
Yeah.
Rather than Newcastle winning it.
Indeed. Then against Wolves, it was 2 worldies they had to rely on. Now, I say had to rely on. Again, you can spin this different ways.
Because they did score those goals.
They scored the goals, and they have the players that can produce those moments. So, again, you don't want to take anything away from that. But then it comes to Craven Cottage, and it feels almost like, for some fans, they felt almost like it's come to a head there. That, all right, you've been not found out, because Newcastle are a good side.
You make it sound like, fool me 4 times, shame on me.
Yeah, exactly. So, again, I'm trying to get this right, but
I think that's entirely fair, because Newcastle fans have spoken openly about the fact that they haven't been convincing, and that, as you said, they were third before this round of games.
Shearer labelled their performance on the weekend as awful.
Yeah, it was a false position. Now, they were particularly bad against Fulham, because I think partly because Fulham made them look that bad, but they've kind of been finding a way. Even the way they won that game against Spurs, there was an element of like, they could argue, and you could argue watching the game even as a neutral, that they did a job on Spurs.
Yes.
And that it's not their fault that Spurs didn't kill them off sooner and were not as incisive.
Yes.
But yeah, they're in a really intriguing place right now, because I think, as we talked about before we came on air, I think we all had this idea of what they would be because of, not just the takeover, but the scale of the takeover and the amount of money that the Saudis have. But
PSR has restricted them.
Yeah, because they were kind of like the last ones in, and I wonder if they had it their way, they'd be the first ones out, because they haven't been able to do what they wanted to do with this particular project.
It's going to take a lot longer, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's the thing with the final financial regulations and so on. I think we probably agree that they needed to come in. But of course, and they have to come in at some point. You can't say, right, we're going to bring them in 5 years, because people would then go crazy. Because when they're brought in, it then kind of locks everything in.
Yeah.
And so for a side like Newcastle, who have these owners, they come in and are playing a little bit of a different ball game to what Chelsea were with Abramovich or Man City were with their owners and so on.
Which wasn't immediate for City either.
No,
a little while, didn't it?
Yeah, and so I think that with the money they had, everyone thought, okay, they're going to be challenging for the Premier League in 2 or 3 years' time. It was never really going to kind of end up like that. And
I think it's a much longer view than that.
It is,
and they knew that.
Yes.
I mean, bear in mind though that when Eddie Howe took over, he had to save them from relegation.
Yeah,
it has still been because they did so well in qualifying from the Champions League. It's kind of possibly from the outside, it's set this idea that Newcastle fans are expecting them to do that every season. I don't necessarily think that is the case.
No, I don't think
also they've got the points on the board from those first 4 games, which is a decent amount of points.
Yeah.
And the opening game, I know you say that Southampton probably should have got something, but it's the opening day, isn't it? So it's often a little bit like the first day of school. A little bit like the first day at a new job.
Yes.
Which in some cases, for some players, it is.
Indeed. So, okay, so we spoke about Villa in the first half and what we kind of expect or projecting sort of hope onto their campaign. With Newcastle, bearing in mind, you've got Liverpool looking pretty good, will be challenging top 4. Villa might well do, or again, we'll see if the schedule gets in the way of that. You've got Arsenal, Man City, obviously, in there. I think Chelsea are going to be up there. I think Maresca's started pretty well and is doing a good job. You start going through everybody. Newcastle, they need to get back into Europe, really. If they were to finish 8th or 9th this season, I think that would be a little bit disappointing. What do you think is expected of them? What do you think they can do?
I think that if they get into the Europa League again, that won't be the worst thing. Because this has to be a gradual ascent, doesn't it? I think they know that. I don't think it's necessarily realistic to think that they're going to sort of storm back into the Champions League again and sort of jump ahead a few steps. And I don't think the owners will expect that. I don't think the fans will be frothing at the mouth if they don't do that. They just need to sort of essentially cement themselves as a European team.
Yeah,
because they, as we've discussed, there are reasons within the rules that mean that they're not just going to be able to go out and splurge. So they've got to be efficient with what they've got. And I think actually, as I said, when you look at the points on the board before this game, they've been pretty good at doing that. Well, credit to Fulham as well, who they're 4 unbeaten in the Premier League now, which equals their best ever run, which is impressive stuff, really. Yep. You must be Fulham loving life over there.
Well, and the Fulham, the former Arsenal men, Emile Smith-Rowe and Alex Iwobi, linking beautifully on that left-hand side.
It's a lovely-looking team and a lovely-looking matchday squad.
Play with freedom as well.
Yeah. And lovely-looking fans, I think you would agree as well.
Fans. Hugh Grant's still got it.
All right.
Yeah.
A lot of tweed over there.
But
I think being caught in the car gave him a bit of an edge that you didn't know about.
And you have a go at me for saying Moyes and Everton was many moons ago. One player who has been disappointed for Newcastle United has been Anthony Gordon.
Yeah.
Very disappointing. I mean, Harvey Barnes seems to have kind of picked up where Gordon left off last season. I wonder if that proposed move to Liverpool has kind of, maybe, I don't know, messed with him a little bit.
No, I don't think it's that. I think he's a great weather vane, isn't he? Because he does seem to be trying to do more now that that Newcastle aren't as fluid, and it feels like he sees himself as the one responsible for doing the creative stuff.
Yeah,
even though they have broadly quite a creative midfield.
He was quite central actually against Fulham, wasn't he?
Yeah, and last season he was, he was outstanding. Really, basically gets into the Euro squad and has all these people clamouring for him to start.
Well, should have played more.
Of which I was one of them because of his body of work. So like this season, I think he's just reaching a little bit. I kind of get it. I actually like to see it from a player because it speaks of wanting a bit more responsibility. And I suppose it's Eddie Howe's job and maybe the job of someone like Harvey Barnes to take the load off him a bit.
Quite possibly.
Barnes is a funny player, isn't he? Because I think
he can hit them.
But the reputation he's had at Leicester and now Newcastle seems to be that he's a bit of a one-trick pony, but the trick is a goal.
Yeah,
it's because he's so direct, isn't he? I feel like I've never seen him do a step over, but I've watched him constantly go past players.
Oh yeah, and I mean that goal he scored against Wolves was just gorgeous, and he was the one who scored against Fulham, of course. There's chat that he may switch allegiances to Scotland. He's eligible. I think he's.
Oh wow, so he's a traitor as well.
That'd be a real coup, though.
It would, yeah.
Clark would
'Cause of his
definitely
goal trick.
Yeah, that would be a lovely substitute for Clark to not use.
Especially seeing McTominay is now like a Naples favourite.
Yeah, well, it was always going to happen.
Did it? Well, one-time Man United Player of the Season. Of course, he's got some quality in there.
Played 3 games. Mourinho did it to spite everyone else. But yeah, no, I mean, that obviously that would be a great move for Harvey Barnes. Yeah,
it would be. Sad to see him go though. If he did.
Well, you made maybe it's the 1 in 1 out policy. You made your move from Scotland to England.
Yeah, still waiting on my England cap.
Yeah, I went from England to Scotland for uni. Didn't like it. Came back.
Yeah.
So maybe Barnes will go there, not liking, come back as well.
Very possibly.
Yeah.
Very possibly. What about this gentleman? Former Everton and Aston Villa CEO Keith Weiner said that Newcastle should be doing more in Saudi to get more PIF-owned sponsors on board and increase their revenue.
Did he say PIF-owned sponsors?
He didn't, I did. Doing more in Saudi, though. That's what they should be doing.
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? It's all about bringing investment in.
It's all about, bringing the brands to get the grands.
Has he not been paying any attention to the Man City case? This is part of the reason they're being investigated. You fucking idiot.
Yeah. So crack on.
Yeah.
Bish.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes. I would hide some of the manager payments. And if you want to conceal any of the player payments as well, I would also advise you do that.
Oh dear. Where would you
kick off late as well? If you want to kick off late in the second half, do it to your heart's content.
Yeah, but do play really good football and win things though.
Yeah. Well,
that. Did you hear something a little bit more wholesome? How to make money? If you're a football club. Erling Haaland.
One weird trick.
Well, Erling Haaland's first club.
You won't believe what it is.
Brian FK, yes, they're close to promotion to Norway's top division, and fans can now get VIP tickets to watch home matches. But as you can imagine, the second tier of Norwegian football is it's not your 40,000 all-seater stadium.
I mean, they're a developed country. Come on.
No, I'm talking about the size of the...
I'm just getting ahead of where this is going.
No, well, okay. They, you can basically you can watch home matches from a tractor.
Yeah, is it a tractor?
That?
It's more a digger, isn't it?
It's a digger.
Well, they put a sofa in the digging bit of the digger.
Yeah, and they hoist you
up,
and
then you sit in it. The picture on Reddit has 3 kids sat in a quite plush-looking sofa, to be fair, over a sign that says "Turning ideas into reality."
Yeah,
which I think they've absolutely delivered on.
I think so as well.
That looks like the Norwegian version of The Wire, when they're sat on that couch.
Yeah, so you get a slightly more elevated view.
It looks great.
You've got to be careful.
You know what?
Though.
It looks like an idea that kids of that age would come up with, and think is brilliant.
Can we go
It's
up there?
not VIP for a football
VIP
football team.
Well, one comment did warn them by saying, "Fall the wrong way, and you're seeing Pele."
That's a strange euphemism for death, isn't it?
Pele's not down there, is he? I just seem to be up there.
It would be. Well, I think they're not saying that. It'd be strange though if Pele was buried in that particular place in Norway. But yes, I think it is an odd euphemism for death, quite frankly.
I like it though.
Okay, well, perhaps you
using it.
Perhaps you can use it. Hey, keep talking to me like that, and you'll be seeing Pele, mate. What?
Apparently, someone replied Farmers League, and someone else replied, to be fair, Brian is a proper farmers club.
Yeah. Well, maybe we could see that in the Premier League, although it seems unlikely. Right, tonight, Carabao Cup action. Chelsea host Barrow. Man City play Watford. And League Two Walsall host Leicester. Villa go to Wycombe Wanderers. We were supposed to have the Andy Brassel derby, AFC Wimbledon, hosting Newcastle United, but the game looks set to be called off due to flooding, which is...
been cried off by weather.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Have you seen the images of Plough Lane?
Yeah.
It looks like...
I glossed over that a bit too quickly, didn't I?
It looks like a golf course. It looks like there's sand pits in it. I don't know how it's happened. But there's no chance of playing on that.
No, there really isn't. The flooding there looks like it's done a proper job on them.
How does it look like that? I don't get it. My brain can't.
I know.
It's like AI.
It looks like a soft play centre.
Yeah. I don't get it.
Maybe there was just like so much water they just threw sand at the problem.
Maybe that is it actually.
I've no idea, but it is quite strange.
It now very obviously is that, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it does look like a golf course though.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. Like if they manage to, I don't think they will. I think the reports are suggesting that it's been called off. But if they manage to play on that, then flip it, Nora.
Footballers love golf.
They do. Gentlemen, I want to go back to the Chelsea fixture against Barrow. Big game for those Barrow players. They're playing against a Premier League side. They're at Stamford Bridge, a famous ground, of course. And I mean, could you imagine if they could win? What a cup set that would be. Well, it's been reported in the press that if they do win that game, then each player gets paid £250. That's actually a win bonus per player across the first five rounds of the competition. So a little bit of an incentive there. However, they have a greater incentive, it would seem, to lose the game because the club has said they will pay each player a bonus of £1,000 if they lose to a Premier League club from the third round onwards. They have subsequently said they'll look to change the scheme.
Yeah.
Well, presumably change the bloody scheme before tonight's game.
What in the reverse psychology is that?
Sometimes...
Do you want the glory or the money?
Recently there was a bank in the USA where they were basically paying out for blank checks essentially,
right?
And they're paying like 50 grand, and like all these people were going, be like, and filming themselves, like, oh, I've.
Sorry, hang on, what?
Yeah, it's really weird. But basically, everyone who did, everyone who took advantage for this in this small window is being, charged with fraud or theft.
So
or
what the
whatever.
bank said, if you have a blank.
Well, no. Someone basically found this out by accident, posted it, and then loads of people got in on it, and obviously the bank's contacting people, and people are getting arrested, blah blah blah.
Oh.
But it feels like Barrow, like, right, before the loophole's closed, got to get in there.
Yeah.
You've got to do it tonight.
Like, if this is a team of cynics, maybe it'll work. If you put Pete in this situation, he'd be like, oh, bloody hell, I bet we'll bloody win now.
Yeah. And
then go out and do it.
It's a remarkable old thing. Like I say, though, for crying out loud, Barrow, change that scheme ahead of tonight. Although I can't. I think as fine footballers, they will choose the glory and not the money.
Yeah. I mean, Chelsea are a particularly difficult proposition here because of how massive their squad is.
Yeah.
Like, they're sort of like, their second string is still might well have like £100 million Mikhailo Mudryk in it. Like,
Mikhailo, if you score, I'll give you 250 quid.
Yeah.
Give you a cut of that. That's 25%.
But if you don't score,
can only give you 50.
Gentlemen, we're going to end today's podcast with a bizarre story. From Wales that happened earlier this month. A few people sent us this. Thank you very much for all those who did. There was a game in the JD Cymru South League against Baglan Dragons and Cwmbran Celtic. And the man at the centre of this story was Jordan Evans, a second-half substitute for Dragons. He came on, changed the game, set up 2 goals and scored the winner in a 4-3 comeback. And you think that's enough.
It's a good enough weekend.
Indeed, that's enough, surely, to make some local paper headlines. Well, he made some wrong headlines as well because he was arrested in the 85th minute by police on suspicion of theft. Now, we should immediately say he was released without charge subsequently.
And also with no further action.
With no further action.
Very comprehensively not guilty.
Yeah, there is a video of this, though, that you see him being marched off the pitch by 2 coppers. Now, Dragons tried to claim, no, he was subbed off in the 85th minute.
By the police.
Yes, I was about to say, he came on, set up 2 goals and scored a winner, and he was a sub, remember. He's not going to be a sub for a sub, okay?
What an amazing...
I think we've seen enough, Mr. Evans. And you've got a video of coppers escorting him off the pitch and then arresting him in the changing room.
I don't know anything about this man. Maybe he's already a local legend.
Yes.
If he wasn't before, he is now.
It's stunning stuff.
What an amazing thing to witness that.
And the other thing, having done what he's done to get them back into the game, even if you're being escorted off the pitch by police, you probably still have to give applause, don't you?
Yeah.
Get an ovation,
yeah,
surely.
It's tricky. Could they just not have waited till the end of the game?
Yeah.
Or maybe they've seen Escape to Victory, and at the end of the game, everyone piles on.
True.
And they,
Which rapper
funnels
was
away.
it? Which, I want to see Old Dirty Bastard, with the coppers waiting for him.
Yeah, he was on the run, and he turned up at a Wu-Tang show on stage. I think he got away again afterwards as well.
Isn't that like an M. Night Shyamalan film? The latest one is about waiting outside for Josh Hartnett.
Is that right?
At a gig.
I love the fact that Old Dirty Bastard thought, the crowd will be with me. No one's going to phone this in.
I like the way you're giving ODB the Solly March treatment.
Oh, come on. If you're going to call yourself that, don't abbreviate it.
No, I like it.
He's called himself that for a reason, There we are.
Old Dirty Bastard.
How old was he when he gave himself the name? That's what I want to know.
Mr. and Mrs. Bastard, a son, Old Dirty.
Yeah. Well, they wouldn't be Mr. and Mrs. Bastard, though, would they?
Thank you for watching a clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an upload. A single upload. Don't miss out on the uploads. The uploads are important.